Boom! Welcome to another edition of the Goldcast. I'm your host, Raymond Solis the First, baby. And with me, as always, is just me. Just me. For the first time in the history of the Goldcast, I will be riding the ship this time. I will be driving the car. I will be flying the plane. The greatest fanalyst in the game is here to bring to you a very positive, a very uplifting episode of the Goldcast because we are in the win column in week one and it feels good. It feels damn good. Doesn't that feel good? Doesn't that feel good? Despite some of the mishaps, we still got the final result that we were looking for, and that's all you really want in a football game, day in, and week out. And so we have a lot to go over today. You know, we're going to look at the good, the bad, the ugly, and the great. But first, I want to say that you can always follow us on Twitter at @the_Goldcast. You can also like us on Facebook.com, The Goldcast, and you can also subscribe to us via iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher, all under the same moniker of The Goldcast. Like, subscribe, and comment because we love to hear from you, and we certainly want to hear your thoughts on what you thought about today's game. So let's get into it. Final score 31-17 over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay in the scalding hot weather in the Sunshine State. Jimmy Garoppolo and company come away with the victory. They scored in every single quarter of this game. And really, the thing that stood out to me the most, I'm sure I'm speaking for most of our fans out there, but it has to be the defense. The defense not only kept us in the game, but also won the game and closed the game, which is something that they have failed to do more often than almost any other team in the league, which is why we've had, top 5 pick the last couple of years. So that to me was a big component because, again, they've put a lot of money into that defensive line because we haven't been able to generate pressure, and we finally have been able to generate pressure. Did you see all the pressure that Jameis Winston had to deal with throughout the day? And what happens when you get pressure to the quarterback? You disrupt the throwing lanes, you disrupt the route, the timing of the throws. In some cases, you don't get it off at all. He was sacked 3 times today. And by the way, our rookie got in a sack today. He got a sack and a TFL. Nick Bosa, I knew he was going to get at least 1. He almost had 2, but Jameis Winston did a nice juke on Nick Bosa, and unfortunately he missed that tackle. But Eric Armstead got a tackle and a TFL today. D Ford got a sack today, so that's great to see him. Sheldon Day got a TFL today as well. But all of that led to the real meat and potatoes of what the defense was able to do against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers today, which was intercept the ball. Turnovers. The Tampa Bay turned over the ball a lot. They did recover most of their fumbles, but we did get one of those fumbles. And we also got 3 picks today. So we surpassed our season total of last year, which I believe was 2. We got 3 today, including 2 pick sixes. So Richard Sherman finally emerged and gave us a big-time play, which is what we've all been waiting for. So it's so nice to see that his first, real big defensive contribution comes in the form of a pick six. Those are always immensely exciting plays, and especially when it happens to you. What it reminded me of was Deion Sanders when he came over to us from Atlanta Falcons and had a monster season with, I think he had 6 or 7 picks that year, and 3 or 4 of them were returned for touchdowns that season. So Richard Sherman chimed in big. He also had 2 pass deflections. Mark Zocha, I don't know how to spell his name, but he did great on special teams, and then he had to fill in for Quan Alexander, who unfortunately got ejected in the first quarter with that helmet-to-helmet hit on Jameis Winston. I thought the rule was 2 personal fouls and then you get ejected. So perhaps that clearly has changed because they kind of made an executive decision to boot him in this game, which I thought was a little unfair. And I think the Niners felt that way too because they gave him the game ball afterwards. Coming back to the team that drafted you and a team you've played successfully for. It was obviously an important day for him, and so they gave him the game ball, which I think then he gave back to like his team and said they earned it, they played. So it was a very humble experience that was exchanged there and afterwards in the locker room. But Akello Witherspoon, who's arguably our worst corner, had a pick six, and not only was it just any pick six, it was the dagger pick six, the pick six that would seal the win. It was a final drive, one possession game, so they needed to score on that drive, and sure enough, we had pressure coming from the edges and forcing Jameis Winston to block his field of vision. He was expecting Mike Evans, because Mike Evans was doing a crossing route. If you go back to the replay on that game, Mike Evans is doing a crossing route, and then he stops. He kind of slows down because he thinks the play is dead. He's going to get sacked. That's what he saw. But then Jameis Winston just lobs it over in that direction, thinking that he's going to complete the route, the crossing route, and he doesn't. And Akello Witherspoon just sits on it. It's an easy read, and this is what you want to do in these situations. You want to take full advantage of it, and he took the pick and took it to the house. He knew it was gone. I think just like Richard Sherman knew it was gone, he made the one jump over the receiver. That was the only tackle he had the break to get his pick six. But that's what you want to see. You want to see closing plays like that. Tavarius Moore almost had a pick six in the red zone. That was a terrific pass deflection that he had. The defense really stopped a lot the touchdowns. I think they only had one touchdown on offense. The other one was the pick six that Jimmy Garoppolo threw, which we'll get into. But that was great. So you had two pass deflections by Richard Sherman. Mark Zachoa had an interception himself and also had a pass deflection. Akello Witherspoon had a pick six and 3 pass deflections. Tavarius Moore, as I mentioned, had one. Fred Warner had a pass deflection. So all of that comes from a combination of sticking to your coverage and more so, at least more so as it played out in this game, was really good pressure on the quarterback to really disrupt his timing. And we got that. We finally got that. And this is going to be an exciting season if this can keep up and the health can stay there. So now let's get to the offensive side of the football, which, kind of had good moments and had bad moments. So to me, this is what the last couple seasons we've had problems with this, but the defense has really been because of stinkers that loses these games. In this case, it was the offense that really got to a rough start. We had 3 touchdowns brought back because of stupid penalties via offensive linemen, just holding, illegal formation. Then there was it was a holding penalty. I think two of them were holding penalties and one was an illegal formation, which was unfortunate because that would have been 2 touchdowns. 2 of them would have been to George Kittle, who had a great game. Again, George Kittle had 8 receptions, more. No one even had half of that in today's game. So clearly he is very difficult to guard and cover. He's so sneaky speed, and his true ability comes in his his yards after the catch. I think that's where he really shines, which is why you can afford to give him line of scrimmage dunk passes or screen passes, because he's so good at shaking defenders. And so you couple that with a blocker like, say, Kyle Juszczyk, then you're bound to get really good positive yardage from him. And so he's just extremely good. There was the Richie James touchdown, which was terrific. That was a great pass. That was 39 yards. He was targeted twice, but George Kittle really got the lion's share of the attention today with 8 receptions. He was also targeted 10 times, which is 8 more times than any other receiver on the team. Tevin Coleman chimed in with a couple catches and 33 yards, 3 targets, and left the game early with an ankle sprain. He did not. Tampa Bay did a really good job stuffing the run today. We did not have a good running game. It did open up a little bit in the second half, but it really struggled to get going in the early half. So credit to Tampa Bay's defensive line for really kind of stiffing that out. I know that they, you have to anticipate a balanced running attack when you go against Kyle Shanahan, because this is what we like to do. We like to, have the run help set up the pass and play action in particular, because we want to do the boots and the waggles, and Kyle loves those play action pass plays. He draws up some terrific plays, often involving people like Kyle Juszczyk coming out of the flat, or George Kittle had one of those plays too. So that was something that needs to get cleaned up. The discipline on the offensive line. Get those plays right, because in actuality, this should have been a blowout. There should have been 3 more touchdowns on the scoreboard today if it wasn't for that. And Tampa Bay shot themselves in the foot a couple times too, with those same kind of bonehead penalties. So that was unfortunate. Jimmy Garoppolo, the numbers look efficient in terms of completion percentage, 18 for 27, 166 yards. Not a whole lot of, yards there that we can see. Did have the 1 touchdown pass to Richie James. He would have had 3 more. He would have had 4 touchdowns today. This line would have looked a lot different without those touchdowns. So I know that Jimmy didn't look good with the pick 6. That was an ugly throw, really telegraphed. It was really a bad throw by Jimmy. And Jimmy's a gunslinger, so he's going to do this. He's going to be taking chances like this throughout the season, barring any injury, of course. So what I'm saying is that you need to get used to mishaps like this. This is but it's that kind of, I would say, that kind of risk taking that made careers like Brett Favre's. Brett Favre threw more picks than any other quarterback in the NFL, and he still has a yellow jacket and a Super Bowl ring. So obviously the chances, the risk taking paid off more often than not for Brett Favre, despite having, that 1 blemish on his record. But I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo has a little bit of that gunslinger in him too, where he does like to take chances. There was the throw in the red zone. The 1 throw in the red zone, it was into double coverage. That didn't work out. In a preseason, we saw him take a pass to, I think, Kendrick Bourne into triple coverage. That didn't work out. But he's going to take chances like that, and the players are going to have to step up. I think he's testing the players to do that. I think George Kittle's obviously a really easy one to consider for those types of plays. I thought Deebo Samuel chipped in very well. He had 3 receptions for 17 yards. He, especially that nice catch early in the first quarter when it was a 3rd down conversion. That was a terrific catch and a spin to get out of it, break at least 1 tackle and get some extra yardage there. But he did have the rookie fumble, where he just kind of was not holding the ball very securely and just kind of ran into his own player and fumbled on himself. So good thing to get that off of his chest. You got to get that out of there. But, running the ball, we need to run the ball better. I think we'll have a little bit more luck against Cincinnati next week, who looked pretty good against Seattle, but I think with Seattle just kind of playing bad and finally kind of shaking out of it and ended up winning that game. So I think we'll have some good luck against Cincinnati. I think I picked us to win that game too in our last episode of we recently talked about season predictions off air. So but yeah, Raheem Mostert came in. I thought he did well filling in. He came in the latter half once Tevin Coleman went out, and so I think the defense was starting to wear down at this point. He averaged 4.4 yards during the game, 9 carries, 40 yards total. Matt Breida had 15 carries, 37 yards. He struggled, 2.5-yard average. Tevin Coleman struggled before he left the game with an ankle, 6 carries for 23 yards, 3.8 average. And then Jimmy had the 1 scramble that got taken back from the penalty. Didn't like seeing him out there running. Obviously, it was a little nerve-wracking to see that. But, it would have gotten us a first down had the penalty not brought it back. So he did wisely slide. And I'm surprised that there wasn't a penalty on that play, because it looked like, the defender kind of tackled and rolled over him because his momentum carried him over, which is much like what Quan Alexander was doing, because he was trying to go in for a hit. And the momentum and the timing of the slide and the moment he had already committed to lunging forward and then after that, Jameis went down to protect himself. So there's a tough plays, man, and he's obviously going to get fined for that too, it's going to suck. It's obviously not going to be a good one. But Quan Alexander is a really good middle linebacker. But we obviously, the way that Mark Zocha, the way that Mark Zocha filled in today, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. I need to go listen to the tape to see how everyone else is pronouncing it. But the fact that he filled in so well, and he also got the block punt earlier in the game, he just had a terrific game overall. So he did great on special teams. Special teams overall did great. So I would still like to see us get more yardage off of punt returns, but punts are so hard. You often, it's to the point now where you're calling more fair catches than anything, because, it depends on field position. So, but Mark filled in great, beautifully. He had the pick. He had the block punt, so he did great. So it's nice to know that we have some really good depth there to fill in. Should Fred Warner or Quan Alexander not be able to, fulfill those roles. But Fred Warner was really good today too. He had a forced fumble. That was a terrific play for him. And the wide receivers, I think to me, Jalen Hurd is nursing a back injury, so we didn't see him today. George Kittle's obviously going to be our stud in that group. And I think of the rookies, Deebo Samuel is the one who's going to emerge, as a reliable target as the season progresses on. That's what I've seen from him. I'm really seeing some good effort from him. He's got good speed. He goes out and grabs the ball, which is what you want to see. So, if you want to see that, because if there's a jump ball situation, you want the players to be aggressive. That's part of the technique too, is to kind of get out there, go out and grab the ball. You have to help the quarterback too, because it's hard to make those throws. So Jimmy, despite Jimmy would have had better numbers today, would have had 4 touchdowns on his resume had it not been for penalties. There were some mistimed throws. He threw behind Marquise Goodwin a couple times, and it led to incompletions. He had obviously the pick 6, so he needs to clean that stuff up, and that will come as the season progresses. Next game, I think he'll be a little bit more cleaner. This is similar like the preseason. Like, he had to shake off the rust for the preseason, and then as you can see, as the preseason progressed on, he played much better as the preseason went along. And so the same thing will happen in the regular season, as long as he's on the field, of course. I hate that we always have to have this if with him, but until he proves us wrong, it's kind of, it's kind of how I feel about it. And I know a lot of other people feel about it too, because I see that criticism all the time. And so as the season progresses, though, he's going to clean up that stuff, because he made more good throws than bad throws. But, pick 6 is the worst type of bad throw you can possibly make. So you never want to see that. So I don't want, this to be like picks every game. You don't want those kind of habits to come out of that. So they're obviously going to look at the tape, and, they're going to get back to it. There wasn't Tevin Coleman was really kind of the one only injury of where a guy was taken out of the game. Quan Alexander was ejected. That's different. So it was unfortunate to see Tevin Coleman, because he's supposed to be a really big contributor this season. Not only is he going to be kind of the first one out of the backfield in most of our offensive game plans, but he's also going to be a threat as a receiver too, because he did that very well in Atlanta. And Kyle Shanahan knows how to use him effectively. So that was unfortunate. Hopefully it's not a high ankle sprain, because if it is, he's going to be out several weeks, just like Nick Bosa was. Nick Bosa missed a month because of that, so he'll miss at least up to 4 games if that's the case. So we'll see what the MRI says on Monday, tomorrow. And Tampa Bay just really never looked comfortable throughout this game. We shut them out in the first quarter. They scored a touchdown in the second quarter. They scored again in the third quarter, and then they only mustered up a field goal in the fourth quarter. But only one actual touchdown from the defense really kept them to 10 points. So if you really add up the stats correctly, the defense held them to 10 points. This was one of the number one offenses last season, despite having a losing record. Tampa Bay was one of the most prolific offenses in the air all year, and they were a good running team too. I felt like I do think they ran the ball pretty well today. I felt like they were gashing us more than we were gashing them. They got over 100 yards on the ground today. I thought Ronald Jones played very well. He got 13 carries for 75 yards and averaged 5.8. So that needs to get cleaned up. So the pressure's there, and we clearly did well. Holding Jameis Winston to a line of 20 for 36, 194 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 picks. So a similar numbers to Jimmy Garoppolo, but he had one more pick 6 than Jimmy did. So that's terrible. But what kept them in this game, I felt, was they had a pretty good running attack, and it kept giving them a chance. Kept giving them good chunk yardage. Jameis Winston was able to get, some throws off and convert some third downs, so that helped them. So, looking ahead, I think they need to clean up is the rushing defense, which performed pretty good last year. So I want to see those guys on the line really kind of stuff the line. More TFLs against these running backs. We need to see more of that. So I think when Quan Alexander comes back next week, and is not just absent for 3/4 of this game, I think when he fills in the whole game, you'll see some of the runs not get we won't get gashed as much. So that'll be something to look forward to next week in Cincinnati. So they're going to stay on the East Coast now and bring on Cincinnati. We'll talk a little bit more about that game later in the week when Rudy comes back into the fold, and we'll get his thoughts obviously on the game, because I know he's chomping at the bit to share his thoughts on what was a very good defensive effort and a good enough offensive effort today. That's how I'll word it. The game balls need to go to the defense today, and rightfully so. And that's it. So, I mean, what did you guys think? What stood out to you? What are you looking forward to against Cincinnati? What do you want to see cleaned up? I've already mentioned it. The penalties, running defense, those things need to get shored up. I want to see better tackling. I saw a lot of missed tackles where our guys are getting shed a little bit, and I want to see that get cleaned up. I want to see the technique tighten up a little bit. I want those tackles to get more sure. There's some guys that are just really good at it. I think Nick Bosa is a pretty good tackler. You can see when he goes out there, he puts an all-in effort every time he's out there. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of him as the season goes on here. But either way, a good win, and I'm looking forward to next week against the Bengals, the team we beat twice in the Super Bowl. I know Chris Collinsworth is looking forward to that. I don't think he's calling the game. I didn't see look ahead there, but yeah, we'll talk more about the Cincinnati game later in the week. And so share your thoughts in the comments section below, via whether it be YouTube. We'd love to hear from you, or chime in to us on social media. I'm on Twitter at Ray Solis, and on Instagram at Ray Solis1. I think YouTube is where everyone really kind of likes to chat the most, so feel free to do that. So once again, your final score: 31 49ers, 17 Buccaneers. I watched the television broadcast. I will look forward to hearing the radio broadcast, because I would like to hear Greg Papa. I missed Greg Papa's touchdown call. I missed it. So I've got to hear the replay tomorrow on his radio show with John Lund. So that'll be fun. So next week, week 2, Sunday, 9:15, 10 o'clock in the morning, Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. So watch out for that. And so this concludes another episode of the Goldcast. I'm your host, Raymond Solis I, and with me is just me. So we'll see you next time. Same Goldcast time, same Goldcast channel.